Hey guys, Less is More back with another video. I know it's been a minute, so I wanted to give you guys some new content. I think today's video will be pretty interesting. So today I wanted to take a look at another out of position 3-bet pot spot. In the past, I've done several videos on small blind versus button. Today we're going to look at a pretty specific spot. It's the small blind 3-better against an early position open, specifically a low jack open. So last week I was going back through some of the upswing Kanu content, and Alex Miller makes a claim in the course that on 8 high and lower boards, as the out of position 3-better versus an early position open, the out of position player can develop an open jamming range. I would see why this might make some sense, because when betting out of position on, let's say, like an 8-5 deuce board, the out of position player should be really polar, and when the out of position player bets, they're representing a strong overpair, right? So, a hand that can pretty comfortably stack off, and the in position player will certainly have to call off with plenty of weaker hands. So it does make some intuitive sense, but I was a bit suspicious because this is versus an early position open. This would be the first time I see this. So I went ahead and ran some sims myself. Well, I actually outsourced these, so I had a guy that I coach run these. Shout out to Josh for running these. I appreciate it. So the first thing we'll do is take a look at the pre-flop ranges. So the first sim I downloaded is the 7-6-5 two-tone board. So the ranges, so the out of position player, pretty tight, pretty linear, has most of the suited broadways, jacks plus, and then some trace amounts of these suited connectors and lower pocket pairs. And then the in position players, since it's an EP open, so the in position player is going to be continuing very tight. It's going to be like this ace-10 suited plus, and going to be flatting mostly with ace-king off and queens through tens. And then the in position player will definitely be calling some of these lower suited connectors and pocket pairs. The in position player will be continuing at a much lower frequency given that they're an EP. So these small amounts of suited connectors and lower pocket pairs are going to make up a pretty good density of the range. So now taking a look at the flop, so this is 7-6-5 two-tone. So as the out of position player, we're going to be doing mostly checking and then some small betting and some big betting. So the good old Doug Polk, you can really do all of it. But basically, so let's say, for instance, we have like a dry 8 high board, let's say like 8-5 deuce. The out of position player is going to be doing much more big betting because they just want to put more money in with their overpairs. So on a board like this, the in position player is going to have is going to interact pretty well with this board, like tons of much more 10-9 and sets and things like that. But the main thing is like the out of position player is going to have a bunch of whiffed overcards, so we can't just be doing lots of betting on this board since the out of position player is just going to have a lot of air. That's the main thing. And if we take a look at the Range Explorer, we'll see that the ranges there's not a significant advantage throughout the range in any particular region. Like even at the top of the range, neither player is getting crushed. So we see like in the sets and straights area up here, neither player has a massive density of those. So you won't see like any range checking per se. Like if you know the in position player has a much higher density of straights and sets on this board than like an equilibrium preflop player would, then you should be doing even more checking. And if you do bet, it should be like even smaller, like a quarter of the pot. On on these lower boards, I took out the small size just for RAM purposes, but on a board like this, I'd imagine there'd be some small betting as well. But the main thing is that you're protecting your checking range. So remember that the imposition player is flatting mostly with their queens. So like a hand like tens and jacks aren't as strong against that range. So they're not going to be as incentivized to bet as like a small blind versus button scenario. However, these overpairs are still betting at a good frequency. But yeah, just remember to mix in checks with these hands and not just go crazy because you have a vulnerable overpair or whatever. But yeah, these broadways with backdoors are definitely bet at a non-zero frequency. So now let's take a look at a drier board, say 8-5 deuce. So here's the equilibrium strategy. So notice you're going to be doing more big betting. So if we take a look at the Range Explorer, the out of position player is going to be doing a little bit better on this board, just because like the imposition player is not going to have any two pair, and we're not going to be like the imposition player shouldn't have any bottom sets, so not as many strong. Okay, so like small amounts of deuces, I guess, but not as many sets as a board like 7-6-5. So betting frequency should go up a little bit, and then we can size up a little bit as well. Yeah, so just a tad more betting, and then, but still no jamming, as Alex Miller claimed in his video. That's sort of why I ran these sims, is to take a look at that claim. But and then here's 8-7 deuce, sizing up even more. This board is much like 8-5 deuce, except the 8-7 is going to give the imposition player a lot of straight draws, and yeah, we're just going to be sizing up on a wetter board like this. So that's sort of the idea. Now, another thing, I did want to mention turn play. So let's go to a more neutral board like 8-5 deuce, right? So when you have a board that, as the three better, you should be doing a lot of checking, you need to make sure you're studying the check line, because I think a lot of people get to the turn and all they know how to do is go bet, 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 or bet, bet, check, or just like know how to give up on the river. But you need to have more tools in your arsenal. The check line is a line that is criminally understudied, so just a friendly reminder to do this. And when you play that node in the tree, if you're studied up, you can be quite confident that you're going to have an edge, and try to make yourself much less uncomfortable in those spots, because your opponent certainly will be quite uncomfortable in the passive lines that they did not study. So on a board like 8-5 deuce, let's take a look at the turn play in the check line. So in the check line, on an offsuit brick, right? Neither player improves to trips, and the board texture has not changed at all. So when you bet on this card, you're saying you have an overpair, and that's about it. So it doesn't really make sense to like go smaller. But again, on this board, we're going to have loads of air, like almost all the ace king, ace queen, ace jack, ace 10, all of that stuff that did not bet the flop. All the ace high that did not bet the flop is going to be in this line. So we still like, once we take check with a hand like pocket aces, we should be putting this hand into the turn check line as well on this little brick. There's not really any hands to protect against, and like when we have ace high, if we have a hand like, or if our range is mostly comprised of ace high and like a check line, we want to mix pocket aces into that line quite a bit, and you would just play it like you have ace high more or less, because then you unblock. Well, you block ace high that would check back for imposition, but you unblock all of the bets. So like if you check, like you unblock all the king queen, king jack, king 10, queen jack that would bet. So like when they bet, you just check call with aces like you would your other ace high, and then you can just check raise the river. So yeah, like once you go into this check line, don't get scared with your pocket kings and just like try to pile in money. Be conscious of your range on the turn, because if you find that, okay, let's take a look at how much ace high we have in this line. So like as that position player, we have, yeah, almost 50% of our range is ace high. So like it's really hard to protect a range like that. Hence why we're doing so much checking. So if you're in the check line, it's going to be really hard to go check on the flop and then check again and have a protected range if you're just pure betting tens through queens or tens through kings, right? The pocket aces check might be a bit intuitive, but yeah, I feel like people just say, well, I want to make sure I get value with my hand, so I'm going to keep betting, but you're really opening yourself up to getting punished in the double check line if you choose to bet all these overpairs again. Because when you bet like if you pure bet a hand, you have to be conscious that when you're pure betting that hand is no longer in your check line. And if a player notices that, then you will become exploitable, and it's quite possible that your player pool is not capable of that. But there are many spots where, I know in my player pool, if a player goes check in a 3-bet pot, they never have pocket kings. Like they just never. So it's really easy to attack that line because they're just pure betting kings on the turn. So yeah, just a side note about that. Let's take a look at the overall turn strategy. Yeah, so like on these lower brick cards, we're going to do loads of checking, as we should. And then like on the cards that are good for us, our betting frequency is going to go up significantly. Like on an offsuit king, we're just going to be potting it on the turn and getting it in on the river. So like after it goes pot call, we're going to be betting a little bit less than half pot as a jam. So let's see. Yeah, so on a total brick, we're just going to be jamming. But on like a flush completing card, we're going to be value betting a little bit thinner. With a hand like King Queen and like Ace King it's a very strong hand. It's just you're going to struggle after the pot bet on the turn. After you jam, you're going to struggle to get called by worse hands. Is sort of the idea. I mean, the imposition range is extremely tight here, so yeah, just be conscious of that. Like on these flush completing rivers, you should be splitting your range into like a block size and a jam size. But yeah, like on the brick rivers, when the SPR is less than 1, you can just jam for the most part. I'd imagine, yeah, on an ace river, you can do a lot of splitting, just because like ace queen can't just all your ace queen can't just comfortably jam, especially on like like an ace of spades. Yeah, you're just gonna be mostly blocking, because even a hand like ace king, if you get called, it's if you jam and get called, it's not like the best situation. So yeah, that's sort of the idea on these flush completing rivers. Just think about how many strong hands are in your opponent's range and how often you're going to get called by worse. And I think these river spots will become a bit more intuitive. But yeah, on the turn, we'll keep looking at this. Oh, okay. Yeah, so on these flush completing turns, we're going to be splitting. And like on a King of Spades turn, we'll be doing a lot of 10% betting. I mean, on the cards that are really good for us, we're going to have some sort of, we're going to be doing small betting of some sort, just because we're going to like have these overpairs that want to bet, but we're going to have loads of King X and a hand like Ace King or Aces that just wants to pile as much money in as possible, especially on a double flush draw board. I mean, the size and frequency is going to go up. So yeah, that's sort of what I wanted to talk about. One more thing I want to do is take a look at the 765 board. I actually haven't looked at this myself. I suspect in the check line, the betting frequency will be even lower than it was in the previous sim. Okay, so it's about the same, but still a similar idea. After it goes check, we're still going to be doing a lot of checking with overpairs. This is let's take a look at an offsuit brick. So yeah, it'll be a similar structure here on the turn. But yeah, that's sort of what I wanted to talk about. And keep in mind, this is versus an early position open. So like, let's say small blind versus button. On the turn, you'll be able to get called by many more weak hands. Because, I mean, the imposition player is going to have hands as strong as, like, pocket queens at a high frequency, even some kings and loads of jacks and tens. So it's kind of hard to pile with a hand like two jacks and get called by worse. But like small blind versus button, that's not going to be as much of an issue. So you can do a little more betting. But yeah, that's sort of what I wanted to talk about today. But thanks for listening. Do me a favor and give the video a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And if you have any questions or requests about videos, yeah, definitely leave that in the comments. And yeah, thanks for tuning in.